Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs, and well, I'm going to discuss basically what Andre from the Seeker has published an article, and it's called Is NATO Falling Apart? And I'm going to discuss basically what he has said. But before I start, just remember, I'm not against Andre. A lot of the stuff that he does write makes a lot of sense, and I do agree with most of what he's saying. And consider this video more as two people sitting around a barbecue, having a discussion about the war in Ukraine and NATO, and disagreeing on topics, and then, well, unfortunately in this case it will be a one-side narrative, because Andre can't reply to this, which is fine. Unfortunately, that's how it works currently. But I would like to discuss what he basically has said. Before I also start, he refers to an article he has written about in 2016, I believe. And if you read through the article, I have to deduct that he has a master's degree in military strategy. So he's supposed to be knowledgeable about this. And, well, according to Andrei Martinov, he should have the qualifications and the paperwork. But as I've discussed many times in my previous videos, credentials is not everything. And there's a simple reason why there is. Firstly, I am South African. Qualifications means here a little bit, but it doesn't mean that much as in the rest of the world, because in South Africa we are required to know more than just our field of expertise, of our field of training. Our study starts after our degree, not during our degree. So whatever engineers or strategists or economists or whatever you understand in South Africa achieves a qualification, he only obtains the tools to do self-study and then gain the necessary experience and knowledge. A typical example also what I would state is that, well, you as a viewer, we all went to school, and some kids will get a D or E, or in our case 40% for math. And then another student will get an A or a triple A or 90% for math. And if you don't look at the numbers, then you will find that they all had math as a subject. And now they are supposed to be qualified as mathematicians. And the assumptions is usually that they have the same capability. No. It doesn't work like that. Surely you can understand that the one that got 90% has a better understanding of math than the guy that actually got 40%. And just for instance sakes, I've met an electronic engineer who had a doctor's degree in electronics, but couldn't even design a simple electronic circuit. And that is why I always say, credentials and the paperwork doesn't mean much for me. It might mean something for you, but here in South Africa, we don't have the same outlook on that. It's all a matter of what you can do. You get good doctors and you get bad doctors. You get good engineers and you get bad engineers. And you get good analysts and you get bad analysts. And then when it comes to military and so on, wars are won and lost, not always on military equipment or forces, but mostly because people made the wrong decisions. The command, the generals made the wrong decisions in either tactic or operational or strategic, and that's why what led to their defeat. If you know, when I read these pro-Russian types of blogs and so on, especially of the Seeker and of Andrei Martinov, then they always refer back to the Second World War. And even they refer how important the Russian offense was and how the Russians defeated the the Germans and so on, and 80% of the German casualties were caused by the Russians on the Eastern Front, and etc., etc. So the Russians are superhuman soldiers. No. You got to look a little bit further. In the initial stages of the World War II, Germany conquered quickly Netherlands, Brussels, France, Switzerland, Austria, and occupied those areas. And then when the Allied forces, the Americans and the British landed in Normandy, they had to start on a very small front and then slowly increase their front line. So the size of the front and the distance from Berlin was not the same as the Eastern Front. If you look at the maps, then the German Eastern Front was huge. And naturally, a lot of more German troops had to be stationed there. So naturally, the casualties on that front would be a lot worse. And then we had the winters, which are a lot more severe in that regions than they are on the Western Front. And we know that the Germans were under-equipped and under-prepared for the winter, and that the partisans disrupted the logistical lines of the Germans. And it was a huge distance from Berlin to the Eastern Front. And the Russians mobilized a hell of a lot more men and equipment than the Allied forces in America and Britain and whatever. So naturally, that is what happened. So I wish sometimes that I know the Russians are very proud. Got no problem with that. But you got to be a little bit realistic and come a little bit to earth and see for what the situation was as is. At the end of the day, you have to agree, the Germans rolled east and they conquered a hell of a lot of land. And at one stage, it looked like the Soviet Union would fall. And then something happened, and then the whole conflict was turned around, and then the Russians were on the initiative and rolled the Germans back. But before that, you always have to remember that the Germans first went far into the west and conquered a hell of a lot of territory and drove the Russians back. You've got to acknowledge that first before you can acknowledge the Russian counteroffensive and the victory of the Russians. Just think about it a little bit. But am I digressing again? Because, I don't know, I'm always doing that. Because I probably want to talk too much. So we're going back to the article, and the article is of Andre. It's NATO failing apart. And then he mentions Turkey and the terrorist attack that happened in Ankara where certain people died. And the Americans tried to make excuses or expressing condolences. And Turkey didn't want to accept that. And then Turkey went on a counteroffensive and started now blaming the YPG in northern Syria and Iraq. And then issued a couple of attacks on these institutions. Andre is referring to a training center. I'm not sure if that was correct, but it doesn't really matter. Whether YPGs are the coalition partners or the foot soldiers or the proxies forces for the Americans in Syria and in Iraq, and they are being supported and armed by the Americans. But according to Andre, the Americans gave the Turkish their blessing to do this attack. What Andre doesn't mention is that the Russians also gave their blessings to Erdogan, but asked him not to be too dramatic and too severe and concentrate on the specific culprits who planned the terrorist attack. So unfortunately, the Russians also agreed that the Turkish should do it. But not too much, don't interfere in the Syrian government forces. Basically, that's what's happening. Is that a break away from NATO? No, not really. But Turkey is a totally different animal when it comes to NATO. It's the odd one out, actually. It is not a Christian country. It's not the same type of culture than European countries or America. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Turkey never became part of the EU, even after applying a long time ago. So from a cultural point, it doesn't really fit. But it has the biggest army, and it's supposed to have some atomic bombs, the B-61, or I think so. It doesn't really matter. So, well, Turkey has Erdogan. And unfortunately, my opinion of Erdogan is he's a sly snake. You gotta watch out for him. He has his own interests at heart. That is number one. And he has his own ideology and his own ideas for Turkey. And he has suppressed some of the oppositions and the media, etc., etc. Don't ever forget about that. And he has invaded Iraq and Syria. And he has bombarded the Syrian or the YPGs in both of those regions. And he has shot down a Russian fighter bomber. And while he's now he bought some S-400s, and then the American cancelled the F-335 deal. And Turkey is leaning to the east, to Russia and China and the New World, but it's keeping its back door open to the West, calling it nicely being neutral and not getting involved in the conflict in Ukraine, but it's still supplying UIVs to Ukraine, and I think there's another military delivery, that some other type of military equipment is going to deliver to Ukraine. And so you've got to be very careful about Erdogan. He's not a good idea. And then he talks about Saudi Arabia and so on. Yes, Saudi Arabia, same thing. They are seeing the options going. They knew what the Americans were doing. They have been mostly supplied by American weapons. I can understand all that and so forth and so on. But that's not the issue. That doesn't mean that NATO is going to break up. If there's a breakup, then it will only be Turkey that will dissociate himself from NATO. And that's the only breakup I really see. Because the rest of the countries need American military. But Andre doesn't fully agree with that, because he says you're going to look at what does America really have to offer in terms of military terms, and what can it do. And NATO, America will never get involved in protecting any other NATO member, which is true, I believe. Why? Because the Americans are actually cowards if it comes to that. They are not prepared to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of anybody else except for themselves. But if they do see that if Europe is destroyed and America is going to stand alone against the rest of the world, then America will get involved in any war in Europe in order to defend its interest and ensure that the war is fought on another country's soil, not in its own. That's important to remember. And if he allows Europe to fall, then you have to think twice about the whole matter. You know, Europe has 450 million people. It has a highly advanced technology manufacturing base industries. It has the euro. It has a lot of financial institutions, etc. So it doesn't mean that they will not support or get involved if Russia would say attack and Germany and France and Britain has to react. Then I'm quite sure that the Americans will enter the war. Make no mistake about it. Because at the end of the day, if they lose, then they're going to stand alone, and that's even worse. One has to do the cost-benefit analysis. And that is how they will think about this. So, again, can't agree with that. No, look, America will not start a nuclear war or a Second World War if Russia attacks Latvia or Estonia or maybe Poland itself or Albania. These countries are not important. But unfortunately, if Germany or France or Brussels or whoever gets involved, then the Americans will join. So don't underestimate it. Got to see the bigger picture. But anyways, so let's start with certain stuff. Andre argues that yes, the American army cannot fight a war against Russia. And I'm sorry, that's a myth. Doesn't matter how you look at it. So let's see. It says here, let's look at what capabilities the US NATO truly have. The USN has a superb submarine force, capable of firing large numbers of relative absolute cruise missiles. It's still very capable, if rather old, nuclear triad. A quantitative, only conventional advantage over Russia. Means they have more weapons than the Russians, but technology-wise, they are not on par. No. Superb, but very vulnerable C4IRS capabilities, which means command, intelligence, and strategic, let me get the right guy. Command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. That's what it means. What it means. But intelligent carrier. That's what it mostly boils down to. It has a printing press allowing for the quasi-infinite printing of dollars. Yes? So what? A comprador elite ruling over all the NATO EU countries. Yeah, what? The most formidable propaganda machine in history. Okay? So what does NATO lack to be a credible military force? And he states, obviously, boots on the ground. So NATO has no boots on the ground. It has no soldiers. It has no infantry. It has no people. Europe has 450 million people. America has 330 million people. That's how much? 780 million people. You want to tell me you cannot build an army out of that? You don't have any boots on the ground. You can't train soldiers. You don't have bodies. Is that the argument that he's trying to present? How many people does Russia have? I don't know, 120 million people? I think, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that number. Doesn't matter. It's just hell of a far less. Far less than the Russians, the NATO forces. Yes, bodies don't always make it up. China has, what, 1.2 million people. How many soldiers can they put on the front? A hell of a lot. 100 million soldiers? Easily. But who's going to put that much soldiers on the front line? That's a little bit too much. So, Russia has a lot of resources. Yes, so America has also oil and gas and minerals, and South America is far away, and Africa is in between, and the Americans can go and conquer these countries, like Germany did with Norway and Sweden and other countries that they needed resources from, then you take it over and Bob's your uncle, you've got access to the resources. You know, even Saudi Arabia, they can cut off the oil. Why? Because Saudi Arabia has mostly American weapons, and if the Americans haven't put any kill switch type of a backdoor in their weapon system, then I would be totally disappointed with them. So in my opinion, the Americans should be able to disable any American armament. Anyone, aircraft, tank, artillery, anything. Patriot systems. Make Saudi Arabia totally vulnerable, take over Saudi Arabia, the oil fields, cut off the oil supplies to the rest of the world. It's nothing to do. It's not that difficult to do. America has the fleet, has the air power, it has the aircraft carriers. Not against Russia. You're not going to implement them there, but you're going to do it against the other countries in order to go find the resources and channel it all back. And then we have this, oh no, Americans don't produce anything. They cannot produce enough tanks and weapons and all this other stuff. Yes, they can. They won't do it now because they still have a capitalist economic model. Money, profits, that's it. Focus on what is important and what you want to sell. But once this picture changes, you're going to transform that industry into a war industry. And then Americans won't depend on Taiwan for microchips. They won't produce those Stingers, or was it the Stingers or the Javelins, which take 3 years to produce because they have a lack of chips. No. Intel, who has companies, chip-making companies in America, will start not producing PC CPUs. They will concentrate and manufacture whatever IC or chip is required for the American military. Why? And can they do it? Yeah, they can do it. It's just a flippant photograph. You have a negative and you shine a negative with a laser or whatever onto a silicon wafer, and there you go. You got a circuit. Even a simple IC they can do. It's not they don't have the capability, they just don't change it over. They're still looking at so much quantity. Give me an order and I will expand my factory. And when it's wartime, there's not much, I think. You will expand, you will produce me a flipping 100,000, 155 rounds now, and each month for this company. That company will produce 100,000, and so forth and so forth. Like I said, Europe has 450 million people, 330 million Americans. Don't tell me you cannot produce weapons with this amount of people and industry. Don't be naive. If America wants to do it, it can do it. Finish and clear. And they will upgrade their missile systems. And they will build missile systems in record time to counter the Russian threat. The missile systems. They have the technology. They just don't have the quantities. Do I need a Patriot system to shoot down an aircraft? Do I need an S-400 to shoot down an aircraft? No. Patriot system is good enough. Do I need 300 kilometers coverage? No, I need 150 Patriot system, 100%. Israel has better system of powerful missiles. Make it on a license. Technology is there. Manufacturing capability is there. Not now, of course, they don't need to. It's still profit orientated. Just for the sakes, the Liberty ship in the Second World War, the ships were produced, it took them a month to build one ship, apparently. But the success of the Liberty ship was, as they changed their production, that they could push out every fourth day, a Liberty ship. 4 days, Liberty ship. 4 days. You look it up. That's how you can produce it. The Russians have the same capability. You know, it's like, so I read up, I'm going to get to the other article he's written about, and then we will take it from there. But so I read up about this, and then we talked about, I think, military strategy, and the guy said, the article said basically, if it's obvious for the one person, it's obvious for the other person as well. That means if it's the tactic is obvious for the Russians, the tactic is also obvious for the Ukrainians. That's how it works. So one guys don't have zombies and the other guys have super geniuses. No. Human intelligence and capability is more or less evenly distributed. That's how it works. Anyway, so unfortunately I cannot agree with that. So I'm not going to discuss all the other items. He goes back again in World War II and so on, and conclusion, and Douglas MacGregor is right. The NATO war against Russia might very well result in the collapse of both NATO and the EU, which in turn will place an official last nail into the coffin of an already long deceased hegemony, which currently still exists only because of its momentum and its propaganda machine. It is an existential threat to both NATO and the West, as it is for the Russians and the East, or South, if you want to call it like that. This is, you can see the Ukrainian conflict and the current political changes in the world as the turning point of the 21st century. Okay, so getting to his other article. The heading is debunking popular cliches about modern warfare. And then he tries to discuss certain things. The first one, cliche number one. The US military has a huge conventional advantage over Russia. And then he says it's not really an advantage. No, I have to agree with that in a certain sense, but it talks about basically, you know, if you have 2 airfields and you have 1,000 aircrafts, but you only can land 100 aircraft in each airfield, then what you're going to do with the other 800? No. The US has bases all over the world. It has multiple airstrips. It can fly aircraft anywhere, and they are long distances, and there are air fuelings, and they can move around, and you know, the Americans have more weapons, or it looks like it, more weapons on paper than the Russians. But we always don't know what the Russians really have. I know they have a lot of tanks in storage. They have the new, well, they have the old T-72s, 80s, 90s, T-90s and so on. They have Su-24s up to MiG-29s, and then up to Su-50, 52 or something like that. But they have a lot of aircraft. They have lots of technology, and yes, the Russians do differ in terms of technology from the Americans. They have hypersonic missiles. They have long-distance cruise missiles. Yes, they travel a little bit longer than the American ones. Americans don't have hypersonic missiles. Yes, okay, I can understand that. But in wartime, technology increases exponentially. Now, the Americans have no hypersonic, but they are working hard on that. And they're also working on the countermeasures for hypersonics. And you will be able to defeat the hypersonic missile. Make no mistake. I can still think of various options for that, various solutions. So hypersonic things are not invincible. They give the Russians now an advantage, but not every. The Russians have long-distance artillery. The Americans also have that. The Russians have long-term troop artillery. The Americans have that the same. The Russians have air defense systems, advanced one. The Americans have the same. NATO has, sorry. The Americans have stealth fighters. The Russians have it. The Americans have long-distance bombers. The Russians have it. So unless you want to compare weapon against weapon system, well, each one has their own strategy and doctrine and tactics, and well, it depends on how the general's going to use it. Yes, the Russians are in Europe. The Americans still have to transport them that, but that's not a problem. Yes, nuclear submarines are an issue. Yes, I know, but you can still get ships through. So I cannot agree with this story that the US military has not a huge advantage over Russia. Just for the sake of manpower, 780 million people versus 120 million people. The industries of 780 million people against the industry of 120 million people. Surely that's an advantage. Is the Abrams tank better than a T-70, T-80, T-90? Probably. Maybe against the Armada, no. But how many Armadas are there? How wide is the front? Is the weapons going to be on the same, at the correct position on the front? Where they are easily? Like air defense systems. If you want air defense, they are in order to protect your assets, important assets. But if you have limited air defenses, then you cannot protect everything, and some things will be vulnerable. And the same applies for the Americans. Yes, I believe at this stage, it doesn't really matter if there are advantages or not. At the end of the day, there's only so many tanks and so many aircrafts available. And not everything is going to be used. There's a lot of going to be in the reserve. The front is a certain size. There's a middle certain divisions and brigades and whatever way you want to call all these stuff, and armies, and spread it over the front, and production facilities. Both companies have I think Americans, the NATO has more production facilities. And they might have, the Russia might have some technological advantage now with the hypersonic missiles. Don't talk about nuclear. The nuclear is totally different. That's Armageddon and self-destructive. So we're only talking about conventional war. It also says that basically, you know, how many tanks can you field? How many aircrafts can you field at any single time? Yes, it makes a point. I think the efficiency of the Americans are like 30% of the aircrafts at any given time they can put into the air. I think the Israelis are about 50%, but I have no idea what the Russians are. Because they have to be constantly serviced, no? I also understand that Abrams tank was not made for the desert environments and the soft sand. It was developed for the European theater. So it will be suitable there. So you cannot compare its performance in the desert as it is there. It has a lot of capabilities. Oh, and I forget about actually this. To mention that. You know, not all Abrams are equal. Not all T-70s are equal. Not all T-80s and T-90s are equal. They were maybe, let's take a number, and it's 1,000 T-70s were produced initially. That's the first model. And then 500 were modified and upgraded to the B version, and then 300 were upgraded to the C version, and so forth. So not all tanks are equal, and not all Abrams are equal, and not all aircrafts are equal. No, It's not the same. It's different upgrade models. But you don't throw the tank away just because it has been upgraded. And then we talk about another cliche, number 2. It says an attacker needs a 3-to-1 or even 4-to-1 advantage over the defender. And he argues against with that, and then he explains to you more or less how the numbers work and how you can position your forces and so on. And if you concentrate your forces, then you can have a 3-to-1 advantage over your enemy at a certain force concentration. And that's where you will attack. And then, but your rest of your defensive line will still be available because the other guy have to have 3-in-1. I've tried to Google and to find out where the hell does this 3-to-1 ratio come from. And does anybody know? It comes from the old times. You know, when they were standing armies, standing in a row on that side and standing on a row on this side, and now we have to attack. And then we had, they needed about more because as they were charging over, then you will lose men. And at the end of the day, you had to have a certain amount that will reach the other point because the people had a limitation of firing. You know, you don't have automatic guns. They had front loaders. And then later on, you got a defensive forces, defensive positions where you were ducking. You will have trenches like in the First World War. So you have trench on this side, trench on that side. And then you will see, you know, if you watch, there's a movie now coming out, All Quiet on the Western Front. I didn't see the new one. I saw the first original one. Brilliant movie. But maybe I think it's brilliant because that's more than 30 years, 40 years ago that I saw it. But in any case, then what I do remember is then English will blow the whistle, then everybody will jump out and storm to the German front, and then just before they reach the trench of the Germans, and they will, when the retreat is called, and the English will run back, or the French, and the Germans will run climb out of the trenches and follow them, and then just when the Germans get to the trenches of the British people, then the whistle will blow and all the Germans run back, and then they will sit back in it. Was there a 3-to-1 advantage? No. They were just more or less equal. But still they advanced and still they tried to storm the positions with no number superiority, and men will die unnecessarily. You know, 3-to-1 ratio is a myth. But even explaining it by him, is still also a cliche. Wars have changed, tactics have changed. It's no. 3-to-1 is a bullshit story. Why? So what I would do is, what the war procedure has come. So you have your front line, and then we'll do a massive artillery barrage. And say there are 1,000 men on that side, and I've got 1,000 men on this side. So by the time I have done my mass bombardment, then maybe only 600 are left. Then my guy's not going to storm over open field where you can cut them down. It doesn't work like that. I will have tanks or APCs. The guys will motor it into those positions at a high speed, which will difficult targets. And or the infantry is protected by a tank or behind. Or they will even leopard crawl over the open field or behind bushes. Whatever techniques there are, mortars, suppressive fire, come on, there are so many alternative issues you want to attack. The point here is that you don't need the 3-to-1 ratio. You can adjust it by adjusting your technique and your strategy. It all depends on what type of weapons do you have, what decisions do you make in terms of strategy. Think about American football. I don't know how many men, I think, no. How many men are there in American football? 15? But in any case, American football, the way that I understand and I don't know much about, it's a total strategic game. The ball is fumbled, there's a setup. Guy runs out, there's a setup. So it's always a set piece. The set piece starts, the game starts to move. 2 minutes later, there's a breakdown. The guys stop and it's set up again. And every time there's a different strategy that's being employed. In South African rugby, we have something different. We play continuously. There is no set pieces. We go and everything has a different thing. And it is like thinking on your feet. There is no pre-planned strategy. There's spur of the moment decisions and tactics and strategies being employed. Yes, there are things like kicking to the post or to the line, or how much you must kick and how much scrums you do, and etc., etc., etc. But the American version is much more strategic. Just think about it in those terms. Setup, strategy, go. Setup, strategy, go. That's how it works. Cliche number 3. High technology wins the day. That's a cliche according to you. Well, in the old days, the higher your technology for cannons were, the further you could shoot and stay out of the reach of the enemy's artillery, then that was a technology advantage. And, well, you could kill the enemy without being killed. You had front loaders, or you had the machine gun, or the cartridge system. Technological advantages. Yes, the more technology there is, the more vulnerable they are. Correct, 100%. But in order to counter your advanced technology, you also have to have technology. You cannot fight a war with a normal cannon, and make it self-loading. Poof, poof, poof. With no proper electronic GPS type of tools or fire guidance or whatever. No, nothing like that. But the other guy has it. So he can easily pinpoint you, poof, poof, and you lose that fight. No, technology, unfortunately, ensures technology on the other side. The question is, which one's technology is the most simple, but the most advanced? And the more advanced it gets, the more complicated it gets, the more it can break down. But electronic doesn't break down that easily. It's mechanical that usually breaks down more easily. And you can make it more robust. Yes, I cannot understand why the Americans opted for the turbine engine for the Abrams tank. But they did, and unfortunately that is now their work, and they might have problems. And it is a fire hazard and all that, but you can watch, you can watch a lot of videos about that. The going basically has stated is that money is not everything, but it buys a hell of a lot. The same goes with technology. Technology is not everything, but it goes a far, far, far way. And, okay. Air defense systems. What? Okay, yeah. So how much money is spent on a UAV, armed drone? It can be defeated by shooting it out of the sky, active defense. Blinding or otherwise disabling its sensors, active defense. Jamming its communication with the operator. Jamming or disabling its navigation system. Camouflage deception, providing it with false targets. Protecting targets by, for example, burying them. Remaining mobile and or decentralized and redundant, passive defense. That is also requiring UAVs. UAVs have become part of the modern world warfare. It is essential. It replaces the forward observer, who can be targeted because he has to have radio communication backwards to his command post, and that is detectable by electronic countermeasures. And they can pinpoint his position, they can take him out. One of the most easiest thing to do. So you need UAVs. Because the UAVs can be shot out of the sky, yes, fighter aircraft can also be shot out. So you're not going to build any fighter aircraft. Come on. Blinding or otherwise disabling its sensors, yes, so you protect them. You try to do countermeasurements. The Russians do it the same. Both forces will have UAVs. Both forces will have the same vulnerabilities unless you provide countermeasures against that. This is not an argument. The Russians also have that. And they have electronic warfare, which makes them vulnerable. And I talked about the whole story about anti-artillery radars and so on. Yes, they are detected, but they have a limitation on distance, number one. And number two is they send out radars that can be detected. And then the Ukrainians can do counter attacks on that position, and you lose it. And these systems are in any case limited. The Russians don't have unlimited counter battery radars or electronic warfare vehicles and so on. They don't. It's limited. Same goes for air defenses. Say number 4, big military budgets win the day. No, I have to agree with that. The Americans build weapons that are way too expensive and underperform for what they pay for. And the Russians are much more efficient at that. But this is in a commercial environment where people want to make money, and it's a capitalistic system and nobody's at war. Once there's war, things change totally. So you mentioned the specific F-22A that was used in, where was it used, in Afghanistan or Syria? Well, no, it doesn't matter. Whether it's one of those two. And F-22 is a stealth fighter. It's a predecessor to the F-35. And it's much more advanced than the F-16s and so on, and F-18s and whatever. The bottom line is the aircraft cost a lot of money, and I think they only produced 200 were ever built. But anyway, I understand it's still better than the F-35. But, well, the project was cancelled. Yes, they were a hell of a lot cost because only 2 of them were built, 200. But the F-35 is is the most expensive aircraft system in the world. But the initial aircraft cost them, I don't know, make it $300 billion for 300 million for a F-35. Well, now the aircraft is maybe 150 million for an aircraft. Why? Because they have sold more of these units, and the Allied forces are buying the F-35s, and so on. So they become cheaper and so on. It's a matter of numbers. And why did they use the F-22 in the desert when it could have been done by an F-16? Well, why not? Gave the pilots a little bit of training to do a bomb run. If they didn't use the F-22, what's the point? Let the guys fly a little bit and bomb run and see how it goes. Test the aircraft. Give the guys some experience. That's why they probably send the F-22. This means nothing what it tries to insinuate. But the Russians also have the Su-52 and what's the other one? The MiG-39, which also I think stealth or so. One of them is stealth. And then he goes on about the whole stealth system and says that these guys are vulnerable and the Russians have radars and they can detect it. He doesn't clearly understand how stealth technology really works. You can pick up a stealth fighter with a wideband commercial radar system. That's no problem. But unfortunately, you have to zoom in on that. And if you want to zoom in and fire an anti-aircraft missile or a radar and an air defense system that has to locate that aircraft and guide the missile, the air defense, then you need proper technology. And that's where stealth technology starts to shine. But that is where it is. It is difficult to target a stealth fighter because you need the proper radar systems. And then again, he says, yeah, but most of them, the missiles, the Russians have now changed their seekers to infrared, how did they call it? The infrared identification sensors. Well, the Americans also have it. They put it on their Stinger, the latest model Stingers, I believe. But the first generation Stingers didn't have it. And how many aircrafts are updated and modified that they're going to shoot at this? You know? Are all the missiles that the Russians are going to shoot have the newest technology inside? No. They first shoot all their old stuff and then inside the new, depending on the threat and so on, and what they require. But Ukrainians got how many Stinger missiles from the West? And how many Russians aircrafts and helicopters to shoot down? So what the hell did they do with all their Stingers? Same with the javelins. What happened to all the javelins? Did they kill 5,000 Russian tanks? No. And you can still have countermeasures against infrared identification type of sensors. You can still bullshit it. And you can develop other systems to protect the aircraft. And you could fly UIVs at a certain ceilings where you cannot reach it with normal short distance, medium range type of air defense systems. You have to use an S-300 or S-400. It can go the distance and the altitude. And then there's a buck for a buck, a dollar for a dollar, because those S-300 missiles are also expensive. Again, what was the story about? Oh yeah, then we have to talk about cliche number 5. Big military alliances help win wars. Yes or no? You have a limited army that you can put fielded. You cannot put 1 million soldiers in a kilometer by kilometer strip. You cannot do that. There's a limited size which you have to have a distance between tanks in order to make them non-vulnerable. You cannot concentrate forces and so on. You can have a lot of reserve. And that's where military alliances shine. In the reserve positions. In certain fronts, sections of the fronts. Depending on how long is the front. And if it's an integrated command and control, then you have a central command and then you have your instructions. And if NATO is used to that, then yes, the Americans are going to take over in any case because that is in their nature and that's what they do. And they have the biggest army, so they would like to be in command of everything. But if I was an ally of the Americans, and like happened in Afghanistan and so on, and Iraq, where the Americans were shooting their own allies, bombarding their own allies, I would sometimes think that the Americans are the biggest threat, so I will keep away in any case. I mean, how many Swedish soldiers died? Oh, yeah, Swedish or Switzerland soldiers died, were bombed. Canadian people were bombed, I think, in Afghanistan. I think 18 or 19 or 21 or somewhere around there. Anyways, you stay out of the way of the Americans. You stay away, otherwise you're going to be killed under friendly fire. But allies gives you the war machine, the industrial capability, and the reserves, the money, everything that goes with a big alliance. It's not a cliche. Cliche number 6, forward deployment gives a major advantage. I have to agree with that. But again, it's forces, American soldiers in Poland and so on, or in Estonia, which amount to 30,000 or 40. Those are tripwires. They are just there as if you shoot on us and if you kill an American soldier, then you will make a war. Then we will end the war. That's how it's going to be. So don't shoot even in that direction. That's the message that the Russians should know. And if the soldiers know, remember, you have to mobilize American civil people to support the war. How do you do that? You put tripwires in there. You put minimal forces that you will be able to sacrifice on the border. The Russians will kill some of them. The population of America will get angry. They will start supporting the war. And then you have your Third World War. And that's the purpose of it. So it's not a major advance in terms of military strategy, but it's a major, in a political sense, advantage to have tripwire soldiers in forward positions. That's what it is. Cliché number 7. The US and NATO are protecting Eastern European countries. I've already addressed that. No, they're not going to do it. It's a cost benefit. But on the other hand is, go look at the Second World War. How did it start? Yes, there's the Germans attacked Poland. No. Germany became an economic powerhouse. The rise of Hitler, the rise of the Nazi. You can talk about it as much as you want, it doesn't really matter. But Churchill and the British saw that as a threat to British Empire. The Polish, they had a good prime minister and they had a good relationship with Germany, and everything was sorted and so on, no problems. And then unfortunately another Polish prime minister who was totally psychopath type of thing started to aggravate the Germans and started those sort of ethnic cleansing. And then just for the sake, he didn't only target Germans. Huh? He targeted Hungarians. He targeted any foreign race, culture, all of them. If you came from Yugoslavia, you will try to chuck you out. So it was not only the Germans, but we heard about the cross-border raids of Polish people into Germany. Whether it's true or false doesn't really matter. We know that there was an agreement for the railway lines to supply Germans at a small peninsula, had to travel through Poland. The Polish people boycotted them. They killed Germans as well, and etc., etc. But that's not the point. The point here is that the Polish were psychopaths. They wanted something. They became aggressive, just like they are doing behaving now. And Britain saw that. And then they took the opportunity and made a defensive pact with Poland. Britain needed a reason to fight, to start a war against Germany. He needed it. He wanted to make war against Germany. He had to find a way. And what he did is, he saw that Polish were sort of acting in a maniac way, and that the possible war will go there. And then he made a defensive pact with Poland. Britain will come to the aid of Poland if Germany attacks them. And that emboldened Polish people. And things escalated. Until a point that Hitler said, no, that's enough, and then he attacked Poland, and we know what happened. But Britain never came to the defense of Poland. Never. Even because they made a defensive pact. What Britain did is they bombed Berlin 6 times. And the Germans were negotiating through their council or the where the diplomats sit in London, embassies, talking to the English and saying we don't want any war with the Germans. And the British just ignored it, and they kept bombing it. And the 7th time, Hitler said, that's it. But Britain declared war on Germany, not the other way around. You can look it up if you don't believe me. And this is what the functions is of tripwires. It's a reason to get involved in a war. First is a deterrent, because if you attack that country, you have to get involved with Big Brother. So deterrent. Second one is, I need a reason to get into the war. That's one reason. No, I didn't care. So only cliche is number 7. Okay. In any case, bottom line is, don't be so sure that NATO will not get involved with Russia in a conventional war. And don't ever underestimate your enemy. And don't ever underestimate the West. And they can mobilize industry for a war industry. And they can manufacture their weapons. And they do have the technology and the know-how to make advanced weapons. And they have 718 million people. And the industry of 718 million people at their disposal to manufacture. If there is a war between America or NATO and Russia, it will not only be a conventional war. It will be a hybrid war. It will be a financial war. It will be a cyber warfare. It will be a cyber warfare that will crash the Chinese economy. No exports. What then? Europe and America can close their economies just like that, turn inwards, reduce warfare, print dollars. If nobody wants to accept dollars, then we conquer them and take their resources. And for our own industrial complex, we will confiscate all the gold that we have in our London vaults and in our Fort Knox and the Russian bullion that they stole. And then they pay these weapon manufacturers with that. They will control wages and profits and all this other stuff that goes with it. No, it will be a war on multiple fronts. Satellites will even be involved. Space might be involved. So focusing on a normal, conventional battle, as long as it doesn't go nuclear, that is important. Never, ever use nuclear weapons, tactically or strategically or whatever you want to call them. Don't use nuclear weapons and don't enter Russian. If you defeat Russia, don't enter Russian territory, because then you will activate Russians' nuclear doctrine. But the rest is all fair game. Like I said, you want to need resources, you go and attack with a small force another country and take the resources. Sea warfare will become again part of it, and all the other stuff that goes with it. You know, like piracy, type of things. So you got to look at the bigger picture. It's all a question is, how far is NATO and America and a deep state willing to go? What are they going to put on the table? This whole thing is nothing more. It's not a chess game. Forget about the chess game. It's a poker game. Poker, where bluffing is the order of the day. And the chance that you might lose big time. And the stakes are high. Poker, not chess, poker. Chess games are for diplomacy. War is a poker game, which becomes a chess game afterwards once the war starts. So, I agree. But, unfortunately, it was a one-sided discussion. I hope you like what you heard. If you like, subscribe. Don't like, too bad. And until next time, cheers.